welcome everybody. We'll get going because we've got a lot to fit in, and we do like to keep to time. Come back, Kamilla. So yes, everyone, please take a seat, and let's also welcome our live stream people. So I hope you've had a nice little stretch and break over lunchtime as well. And so I think we're going to be using Slido for questions again as well. And so this is all about fall prevention in the community. So my name's Cathie Sherrington. I'm a professor at the University of Sydney with a background as a physiotherapist, and my co-chair will introduce herself.
Kamilla Haufort, works South East Sydney Local Health District, also a background in exercise delivery and managing program around New South Wales.
Thank you, Kamilla. So we're delighted to welcome our first speakers, who are Eloise Borschtsch and Gwen Korebrits, and they're going to be telling us about dance for healthy ageing. Welcome.
Hello everyone, thank you for the lovely introduction and for having me speak today on basically Dance for Healthy Ageing and our health promotion partnership with the Dance Health Alliance Australia. It seems quite fitting to be presenting on this today because it was only this time last year where initial interest in these programs from the Dance Health Alliance Australia was established by staff and consumers within our district. So I'm really excited to show where we've come in this time frame. And I'm even more excited to be joined by the wonderful Gwen from the Dance Health Alliance Australia here today, who at the end of the presentation will be doing a little bit of a practical insight into the programs that we'll review today. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the country that we are meeting on today and recognise that we are privileged to live and work on Aboriginal land. I also pay my respect toward traditional custodians, elders both past and present, and all Aboriginal people attending this meeting today. So a bit of background. So my role, I'm a senior physiotherapist within the health promotion team at the Western New South Wales Local Health District. And health promotion is really responsible for planning, coordinating, facilitating, partnering and evaluating both new and existing programs that exist for healthy eating, active living and most definitely healthy ageing as well. And when we came across the Dance Health Alliance Australia, they were really excited to be involved with our rural district. And they are the founders of the Dance Wise and the Dance Moves programs, of which we have looked into for our district. These programs are basically exercise as dance programs that are really inclusive for all levels of movement ability, cognitive and mental health backgrounds. So a little overview on today. The first section we're going to look at is, why dance? What is some of the evidence and the background behind it? And I suppose some of the aims that we aim to look at throughout our evaluation into these programs. The second section will look at the Dance Wise and the Dance Moves programs in a little bit more detail, and also our evaluation plan from a health promotion point of view. And finally, as it kind of sounds, I'll be inviting Gwen up to provide a bit of a practical insight. So get ready to move a little bit after lunch as much as we feel we can. Okay, lovely. So, why dance? I think when we looked really recently at some of the evidence and the research behind dance, and more so recently some of our consumer feedback, these are some of the most common themes that we have observed. So firstly, dance can be a really great form of aerobic activity. So we can use different songs, different speeds and different forms of movement to really elicit a positive response in the heart rate. So really good for a cardiovascular benefit. It's also a really great form of low-level resistance training, and we can use our musculature structure in different speeds and different movement planes, but we can also use really isometric versions of activity to see a positive change in the muscle structure. Dance also is really great from a reaction timing perspective and spatial and sensory awareness. You are constantly following the lead of someone else, so the minute they change what they're doing, you have to be quite quite quick to react with how they're moving. And I guess we've heard a lot on the importance of dual tasking. And so that ability to think and move simultaneously, I think, is a really critical element when we're particularly looking at fall prevention specifically, but also ageing as well. I quite like dance because it's very flexible. There's no sets, there's no reps, and I suppose that's what makes it really fun. We want people, and we've heard a lot today, it needs to be something that people enjoy, that they want to do. And I guess that sustainability of the program delivery, it needs to be fun for the facilitators as well. So having a bit of flexibility always helps in that sense. Dance is also inclusive. You know, we can dance sitting down, we can dance standing up. There's even some good research for virtual provision as well. So it's quite, I guess, generalised in lots of different settings. I think we do need to appreciate, though, that for a lot of people, songs and dance can be positive experiences and perhaps for others can be quite negative. So having a really appropriate boundary and set with your participants in groups needs to be really well respected. But definitely, we know we form a lot of great social connections through these programs, and there's really good evidence to support dance and research through mental health as well. And particularly from our district perspective, Western New South Wales Local Health District is a very multicultural society. So we know that when we can empower people to use music that's really relevant to their culture and their backgrounds and allow them to tell stories through the way they're moving and the music that they use, that hopefully we see an increased motivation to continue in attending as well. From a health promotion perspective, anyone can be trained in the programs as well, so there's no prerequisites in terms of requirements or background, which from a capacity building perspective, to be able to offload our health systems is really beneficial. And as I said, good evidence for virtual program use as well. I wanted to introduce a metaphor from a health promotion point of view, and most of you may already be familiar with this, so I apologise if that's the case, but this is a stream of water. And when we zoom out and we look at the bigger picture, we have an upstream element. So upstream is very much prevention focused. It's population level, and it's very much looking at stopping a particular determinant or health concern from actually entering the stream in the first place. But then we have the midstream, so we can acknowledge, okay, there's something in the stream, a health determinant, a health concern, and you know, what can we do from a screening point of view or an early intervention area to actually stop progression further downstream. Of course, we do also have the downstream. I think traditionally health promotion has very much focused on the up and the midstream, but I think, you know, moving forward within our healthcare systems, we really need to look at how we can reduce the secondary impact on our healthcare system and look at what programs we can implement on the whole stream rather than just the up and the midstream. And that's where we found these two programs from the Dance Health Alliance really valuable, because you can apply them, which we'll talk about in a moment, anywhere on that stream. So for example, we could have an open community-based program, or we could target subgroups of our population, or perhaps individuals with a history of falling, a fear of falling, or simply just reporting that they'd like to connect more with their community. And finally, we do have some data, evidence, research for dance in Parkinson's disease, depression and anxiety, multiple sclerosis, dementia, and also use within the aged care facilities as well. So quite a versatile and, I guess, generalisable way of using one intervention across multiple settings. Okay, so this section I just wanted to introduce the two Dance Health Alliance programs that our district has looked into. So the first program is called Dance Wise, and it is a fully seated program that runs for about 30 minutes. Really appropriate for anyone with a lower limb movement restriction, or perhaps someone who's simply just not quite confident to start standing up. Whereas the second program is called Dance Moves, which is about 15 minutes standing, transitioning to about half an hour in a standard position. And what I really like to stress with this is everyone comes into these programs as a dancer. There's no lefts and rights, there's no rights or wrongs, which is really empowering in a moment when I get Gwen up here to do a bit of a demo. You'll see I'm not in tune at all with her, but that's the whole point. It's meant to be fun, it's meant to be enjoyable, and I guess encouraging people to move however they feel they want to on that particular day. And when we look at chronic conditions, we know that every day can be different, so being flexible in allowing for that has been really beneficial to see. Likewise, just stepping into a semi-clinical viewpoint, I wanted to run through a few of the training concepts that I have seen implemented or used in these programs. And as I mentioned before, we can use music and different songs and speeds to elicit interval training. So we might start with quite a slow song, slow heart rate, build it to moderate, build it to high, and then drop it back down. And obviously, depending on the length of that program, we'd see a good cardiovascular response over that time frame. Likewise, we also integrate quite a lot of brain training into the program. So it might be that you remember the choreography for the chorus at the start and at the end, or if you repeat a certain song, that the individual has that ability to think, move, and react all simultaneously with the music. And really, I think that's an important thing to focus on is reaction timing. And we know that when we're navigating external environments from a fall perspective, being able to react and I guess navigate that space and move in a safe manner is really quite critical. Putting, I guess, my physio brain on for a moment, and we've had so much, wonderful talks this morning already on the importance of the foot and the feet when it comes to fall prevention. But when we enjoy music, we simply tap our feet, and these programs really elicit a lot of that within them. So we see quite good range of motion in the dorsiflexion and the plantarflexion of the ankle, which really is critical, I guess, for foot clearance, but most definitely that late swing initial stance phase of our gait cycle. So just something that ties in quite nicely naturally. Obviously, these programs also encourage a lot of social interactivity and a lot of emotional connection. We can really promote that cognitive recall and that cognitive and movement-based connection between, asking the individuals, what movie was this song in, or what was this song called, or really eliciting that connection to the programs as well. So I just wanted to introduce, where we're up to now in our district. So in January this year, we did train 14 people from targeted community groups and LGAs, and also residential aged care facilities that are attached to our NPS facilities in the district. We had a range of staff backgrounds trained, and we had some really lovely comments from the training, which was really great to see. And I did just want to share some pictures of the day. It was a really enjoyable way to learn, and when we have a very widespread district coming together with like-minded people that you never would really cross paths with in that time frame was really quite empowering, and we do plan on running future trainings in July, which is exciting. Finally, though, as part of our health promotion evaluation, we are reviewing, the efficiency of these programs, the cost effectiveness of these programs, and this is based on one program being about 10 weeks or 10 sessions, depending. So at the start of the program, we're definitely collecting key demographic details. If the individual resides in the community and is doing a community-based program, we are looking at their fall history, their mobility, their engagement in purposeful activity, and loneliness and functional efficacy international questionnaires. But if we are running the program in an aged care facility, we're still interested in definitely fall and loneliness history, but we're using the ED 5G 5L health questionnaire and weekly pre and post session feedback, because we know in our aged care facilities day to day, the mood of the residents may change, and being able to assess the impact of one session on that individual's day has been quite powerful. Finally, we do obviously appreciate outcome measures. So in the corrected population cohort, we are looking at the 10-metre walk test, 30-second chair stand test, timed up and go, and the single leg stance test as well. But we are also looking at, if my clicker will work. Oh, there we go. The carer experience. Carers are welcome to join this program, and because anyone with any cognitive or, even mental health backgrounds, if they would like a support person present, absolutely welcome. So we want to know how the carer has found the program, and most definitely how the facilitators find the program as well. All about looking for something that is sustainable and most definitely generalisable, as I mentioned as well. Very long story short, we're in the very early, stages of this, but it is all part of our value care plan in our district to look at our reach, engagement, participant numbers, cost effectiveness, our falls in our aged care facilities and their harm scores, and in the community setting, the likelihood of the individuals that participate to either continue or go on and do a different form of exercise, so that sustainability beyond the scope of the actual program itself. But it is all in progress. I don't have any objective data to share, but I do have a couple of subjective feedback/comments that I'd really like to share today. I've been assisting and visiting the towns where the programs are currently run, and I wanted to share a couple of comments from one of the Dance Wise programs that is being run in our aged care facility. Basically, the age range is about 78 to 96 years of age, and the feedback is that they wouldn't change a thing. It brings them a lot of joy in their day-to-day life, and a lot of the time the feedback is, pre-session, someone was feeling a little bit down on that day, but after the session all they had written down was smile. I think that's a really nice comparator to see that it made a difference on that day. Likewise, in the aged care facilities, we've found that staff are also dancing down the corridors and enjoying themselves throughout the day, which I think really enlightens the mood on every single level in that setting. Finally, in the community, I visited a program a few weeks ago, Dance Moves, and it was in a really rural community, and it was just beautiful to see that when I arrived, the participants were so excited to show me that they'd learnt the choreography to an entire song. They'd practiced it for 5 weeks, anticipating that I would be there, and it was just a lovely thing to be involved in. But a comment that stuck with me was that individual, one of the individuals in the group, was teaching that dance to their grandchildren, and they dance around their living room together. So I think that really elicits a positive change in engaging activity beyond the sessions as well. And that other last comment there is more about, leaving the participants smiling at the end, and that perhaps a lot of the participants that are in these programs don't get out much, but the group is great for their town. So really exciting, very early stages in terms of evaluating, but looking forward to hopefully sharing the future where we end with this. But that's enough of me talking, and I probably ran over time, so I do apologise, but I'd like to welcome Gwen from the Dance Health Alliance Australia up now, and thank you.
At the Dance Health Alliance, we believe everyone's a dancer regardless of your age or ability. We believe that dancing is in our DNA, and our superpower is taking people who don't think they can dance, training them, and then they end up teaching people to dance. And that's what I love, that complete circle. I'm just going to ask you now to stand to your feet for a moment, and we're going to just work off a little bit of lunch. I'm going to invite you just to lift one hand. Thank you, Susie. All right, now you can dance like there's no one watching. Okay, let's just add a little sway. Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, that's it. You know you're better looking when you're dancing. Let's just take one hand. Now follow that hand with your eyes. That's the difference between dancing and exercise. Let's go. Ready? You know the words, you can sing along. This is our brain training section. No pressure. One hand up, one hand down. No right or wrong, remember, but one hand up, one hand down. One hand up, one hand down. No right or wrong, just saying. Tap, clap, roll, surprise. dancers from the top. Now you can remember it. What came next? Good job. Oh, got me up. Ready for that flip? You've got a second chance. One hand up. Yes! Oh, but you can do it now. You're a prime example. All right, dancers, let's go. Oh yeah, pump it up. Cross it over. Ready for that? A little bit quicker. Tap and clap. Are you ready? Let's go. Woo! Oh, well. Yeah, thank you.
Brilliant, that was brilliant. And what I loved the most was looking back on everyone's faces and not everyone was grumpy. Everyone was smiling, and I think we should all do that every day. So next we have Natalie's student. So we've got Daniel Cheung coming to talk about a scoping review of safer mobility behaviour for falls prevention and implications for people with Parkinson's disease. So, very welcome.
All right, thank you. What an invigorating dance session. I was the one, by the way, who couldn't coordinate. I was probably a little bit too nervous in my talk to her. But no, thank you. That was really great. Okay, all right. So, good afternoon. I would like to share with you all one of the studies that we have been working on recently, which is a scoping review of safe mobility behaviour in fall prevention, and specifically thinking about implications for people with Parkinson's disease. Now, as we all know, falls is a major issue for older adults, and even more so it is for people with Parkinson's disease, given that fall rates are doubled, and thinking through that up to 86% of these fallers fall recurrently. Now, disease-specific impairments such as freezing, poor balance, cognitive impairment have all been associated with this increase in fall risk. Now, when we think about the current evidence that Natalie shared this morning, exercise can reduce the rate of falls by about 26%. However, again, as mentioned this morning, when you think about it, the fall rate still remains unacceptably high, and with often questionable effects for people with more advanced disease, and often to the exclusion of people with moderate to severe disease severity. So therefore, there is a need to explore other domains to reduce this fall rate. Now, under the WHO fall risk factor model, behaviour is considered. And one behavioural risk factor is what we call risk-taking behaviour, and that's pretty self-intuitive, right? Activities that are performed in a way that might increase someone's risk of falling. However, our team thinks that perhaps a more useful concept to guide fall prevention may be what we call safe mobility behaviour, where once risk is identified, perhaps the emphasis should be placed on improving the safety in the way someone moves around. Now, emerging evidence has suggested that perhaps a safe mobility behavioural approach in combination with existing interventions should be considered for this population. However, currently there is no clear definition on this concept, and often components of safe mobility behaviour are mentioned separately across different domains rather than holistically together. So the aim of this scoping review was really to map out this concept of safe mobility behaviour by answering the following research questions. So thinking through how is it defined, what are its key concepts and features, and ultimately, how does it all apply for people with Parkinson's disease? And essentially, the findings of this study was used to develop a framework to conceptualize safe mobility behaviour as applied for people with Parkinson's. So just a brief slide on the methods. We followed the Joanna Briggs Institute's methodology for scoping reviews, as you can see outlined on this slide. And just to provide a little bit more detail on the eligibility criteria for this review, we used the PCC mnemonic, person, concept, and context. So we studies that included general older adults 65 and over, or people with Parkinson's disease or other neurodegenerative disease regardless of age were included. We also looked at studies that sought to define, describe, or explain this concept of safe mobility behaviour, and we were looking at within home, community, and primary care settings. And just a brief mention about our sources, we only included peer-reviewed journal articles of all study designs in English or Portuguese. All right, now on to the more interesting part. So after the process of study selection, the review ultimately yielded 135 publications within 117 studies for this review. Studies were published between 1986 and 2022. And as you probably don't know if you can see it, but in the world map, you can see that 89% of these studies came from Western countries, with the top two most common study designs being observational studies and reviews. And out of all the studies that included participants with Parkinson's disease, the mean age was about 71.2 years, and participants had a range of mild to moderate disease severity. Now, out of all the included publications, what was interesting was that safe mobility behaviour was not explicitly defined. However, we did find that 3 publications provided definitions to terms that we thought were relevant to our topic, most notably this definition of behaviour in general by Professor Lindsay Clemson. What we did find, however, was that publications describe the characteristics of safe mobility behaviour performance, or rather thinking through what does safe mobility behaviour in action actually look like. And what we found was that performance was really made up of a combination of 4 observable actions and 3 associated cognitive processes. So if we have a look at the observable actions, the 4 that we found was slowing down, scanning ahead for perhaps obstacles ahead in your path, using other movement strategies, and that included things like having a wider base of support, and also where needed, using external assistance, using things such as mobility aids. Now, these 4 observable actions we found were used in combination with these 3 associated cognitive processes, which was awareness, so having awareness of perhaps your own physical ability, paying attention to the task, so perhaps reducing distractions and focusing again on the task at hand, and a process of planning. Now, what we also found was that quite a few of the publications explain the concepts that influenced safe mobility behaviour, or rather thinking through what are the key factors that influences someone's mobility behaviour. And firstly, what we found was that person-related factors that influence their mobility behaviour involved a combination of their physical, cognitive, and affective domains. We also found that there were both environmental and task-related influences to someone's mobility behaviour, and both of those were really conceptualised by this interaction between a person's capability and whether or not that was sufficient or not to meet the demands of an environment or task. What was really interesting was that ultimately, studies explained that mobility behaviour was formed by a dynamic interaction between the person, the environment that they were in, and the task that they were performing. And essentially the combination of these 3 components is what determined whether the behaviour being performed was safe or risky within that specific context. Now, just a few discussion points to cover today. Firstly, this topic has been gaining interest, particularly in the last 2 decades. However, there really is a lack of consistency in presenting this concept. Most notably, we found 22 publications mention terms such as safer walking habits without really clearly explaining what that actually meant. Also, what we found was that important considerations really need to be made specifically for people with Parkinson's in this realm of safe mobility behaviour. That is, specifically, that strategies need to target disease impairments and that should be considered for fall prevention. So specific observable actions that came up in the literature included things like queuing to initiate movement or turning in a wider arc to avoid freezing. And specific associated cognitive processes included using the posture first strategy. So that was prioritizing to safely complete a motor task first, such as walking, before addressing a secondary cognitive task, such as talking. And this also applied to, influences to mobility behaviour. Because although safe mobility behaviour was required in both familiar and unfamiliar contexts, specifically for Parkinson's disease, what came out in the literature was that crowds and dual tasking were highlighted as really specific situations that require safe mobility behaviour. All right, so essentially learnings from this review resulted in the development of a definition and framework of safe mobility behaviour. If you really think about it, by nature, mobility behaviours, even for you and I, carry with them some level of risk of falling, even when strategies are put in place. So what we propose is a new term of what we call safer mobility behaviour. And we define it as any protective action and associated functional cognitive process used to reduce the likelihood of a fall. And what we've done is we've created this diagrammatic framework to explain that. So what you can see here in the middle there, so someone's mobility behaviour in the centre, it's formed from that dynamic interaction that we talked about between the person, their environment and the task. And at the top there of the diagram, you can see that furthermore, person-related factors that shape their mobility behaviours involve that interaction between their physical, cognitive and affective domains. So what you can see here is that really mobility behaviour is unique to each person and it moves across a spectrum of riskier to safer mobility behaviour. So in conclusion, what we were able to do was we were able to provide an overview of safer mobility behaviour, especially for people with Parkinson's living within the community. And whilst we believe that safer mobility is already being promoted by clinicians on the day-to-day, what this study does is it provides conceptual clarity to the promotion of this concept. And we hope that this study will also help provide a basis for future development of assessments and interventions for the future. Thank you.
Stay here.
Yep.
That was brilliant, thank you. Have we got any questions? Oh, there's one over here.
As a person with Parkinson's, there's balance. There's an unsafe jumper on the floor. It wasn't me. It was the jumper's fault, of course. But that just brings the point to what I want to say is that I feel like the word behaviour represents a moralistic sort of approach to it. I get a behaviour report about my child. I immediately think, what has he done? And it actually was a positive report. But at the same time, I feel like what you said was safer movement strategies would be a better word for it because I feel like judged already that my behaviour was wrong and I've done the wrong thing by putting my jumper on the floor in an unsafe way.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. I mean, firstly, this topic of what we're thinking about is really, really new. And actually one of the second studies, and thank you so much for bringing that up, and one of our second studies actually is because we don't know what this topic entails, we've actually gone out and interviewed and sought out the opinions of people with lived experience as well as clinicians and researchers. And interestingly enough, actually, that you bring up behaviour, because in other contexts, I believe some of our colleagues in Canada, they mentioned that, using perhaps behaviour was bringing out things that were quite negative. Like, for example, for someone to be safe, they thought, oh, maybe we should just leave them in bed all day kind of thing. And that was not obviously our intention as well. So, no, I do appreciate that feedback and we'll definitely consider that. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Hi, great presentation, by the way. You showed that in this research, you looked at papers in different countries and contexts. did you observe any difference across different contexts? I'm saying that because I'm from Brazil, I'm from South America. We have a different way of thinking about safety. So I'm not too sure if that applies to your model.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and I guess that's one of the reasons why we drew out that most of the studies that came out are from Western countries, and you're absolutely right, and that really pertains particularly to the affective part, where people's values on what safety looks like differs across. And for the very few publications that came out in non-Western countries were actually from Asian countries, and from a Chinese background myself. Safety potentially looks like, having the family, it's my responsibility to look after, my parents and, those sorts of sentiments. So, we're completely aware that perhaps a lot of what we're drawing from is from a Western sort of thought, and we're very interested to look at what this might look like across different cultures. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniel. That was very interesting. Next we're moving to falls prevention in Aboriginal people, and we're delighted to welcome Professor Rebecca Ivers from UNSW and Cassia, Lindsay as well. Welcome.
Thanks, Cathie. I feel like we need some kind of interactive display, and I can't really guarantee that we're going to do that, but we do have merch, so thank you, Cassia. I'd just like to introduce Cassia. Cassie's a Kamilla woman. She's a physio. She's working on the fall prevention program on Ironbark with me as well, and we're going to co-present this presentation. And I know many of you will have heard about Ironbark in the future. We presented lots of times over the last 10 years, so giving you an update on where we are. So I would like to acknowledge we're all meeting on unceded Aboriginal land, of course, and pay my respect to elders, past and present, and acknowledge any Aboriginal people today. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. So we did a lot of work on Ironbark. Ironbark is an Aboriginal designed fall prevention program. We've been working on it. As I said, we had funding from New South Wales Health 10 years ago, and we've just finished a major trial. So I want to come back and give you a few of the interim results. Coming through, we're not quite finished the analysis, but we thought it's such a good opportunity to talk to so many of you about what's been happening and where we're at, that we wanted to get the results out to you. Background to it, for those of you who don't know, we originally did some audits of fall prevention programs available to Aboriginal people in New South Wales. We looked at fall risk factors, and we looked at the burden through various sources of studies, and we can provide you with all that information. But importantly, we did qualitative work with communities across New South Wales. So we ran yarning circles with 80 older Aboriginal people and talked about what falls meant to them and what kind of fall prevention programs they would like to attend. And that informed the development of the Ironbark program. So to develop it, what the community feedback was, they wanted it to be an ongoing program delivered in settings that they felt comfortable in. That meant Aboriginal community controlled health services, but it could also be non-Aboriginal settings where there were Aboriginal people, where people felt comfortable and supported. And they wanted it to be free and, as I said, ongoing. So we designed it based around evidence-based programs, strength and balance, exercises of challenge, strength and balance, and a yarning circle and morning tea. So an hour and a half long session every week. And the program was designed though with culturally specific elements. So it was designed by Aboriginal people. When we piloted, we had feedback slips every week from the people delivering the program and from the site, participants, and we revised it according to that feedback. So it was really led by Aboriginal people. So Julianne Coombs was one of the project officers who worked on the original pilot, worked with one of our PhD students with community to keep refining the program and make sure that it did reflect what the community and the participants actually wanted. So we did a pilot and we showed that it was effective. Then we decided we needed to have a big trial to show that it prevented fall. So we showed that it improved strength and balance, but we all know, there's many of you from LHDs, we know we want evidence for government so that we could get funding for it. So we really wanted to go out and get a big trial done. So We got funding from NHMRC for a very big and, I admit, ambitious trial. 60 sites across 3 states, a cluster randomised control trial. Beginning of 2020, we had 10 sites ready to go. We had everything. We were all lined up doing baseline data, and then COVID hit. So, and as you can see from that slide, it was pretty disastrous. And we had every natural disaster. We'd already had floods and bushfires, and then COVID hit, and it really was pretty dramatic. You can't ask older Aboriginal people who were vulnerable to get together and do physical activity in the middle of a COVID pandemic. So, and we ran it in New South Wales in the end, and so we had rolling lockdowns. We'd start up, we'd shut down again. But actually the team was incredibly resilient, and we got through it. What we did do though, we had to redesign. The big randomised control trial it just became evident very quickly that just wasn't going to happen. We didn't have the time to have the consultation for randomisation. The randomisation process was working okay, but we just ran out of time, and we had to actually then redesign the trial so that it became a controlled pre-post, and sites actually picked which intervention they wanted. That also meant that every site picked the Ironbark program, the fall prevention program. They didn't want to do the control program. So we ended up with 16 intervention sites and 3 controls in the end. So it wasn't quite what we'd envisaged, but we did incredibly well, and it did show that it was very, very, very responsive to community demand. So the programs were, so basically we compared Ironbark to a healthy ageing program, which is just like an elders program. Old people get together and do whatever they want. So they would be having discussions, getting people in to talk to them, doing craft, going for walks and excursions. The Ironbark program, as I said, in Aboriginal community controlled settings or organisations, and in some cases it was delivered in non-Aboriginal community settings delivered by Aboriginal staff. And it was delivered by an exercise physiologist or a physiotherapist or an Aboriginal fitness trainer. The program's designed to be delivered by a health practitioner who can run a yarning circle and deliver the exercise program. We had an Aboriginal fitness trainer delivering it. There's a range of different people, so it doesn't matter. We can train the trainer and make sure that the program is delivered appropriately. And we did baseline and follow-up measures, and they were collected by Aboriginal research assistants at all sites. So the results, so as I said, 19 participating sites. We ran it between October 2021 and December 2023 for the main trial. This is just a flow diagram that shows you the dropout, and you can see that we did have a reasonable dropout from beginning to end for the intervention and for the control. We have looked at the characteristics of the people that dropped down, and basically they were older and they were sicker than the people that stayed in the trial. So I'll show you the participants, and you'll see that they are generally a pretty frail bunch, but the people that dropped out were even more frail. So we do have a bit of work to do to think about how do we actually keep those people engaged in the program. So this is showing you the characteristics of participants. Now, what you do need to know, what's important here, is that 40% of them were male. Now, that's pretty unique for fall prevention programs. Generally, we struggle to get that many people engaged in community-level programs. We included people from 45 and up. You could see we got around 40% of people aged 70 and up, so we did get a reasonable number of older people. But also interestingly, I think notice that we had a lot of people with lots of chronic health conditions. So 30% of people had 4 or 5 health conditions, 25% in the Ironbark group had 6 or more comorbidities. So that's a lot of chronic conditions that people are dealing with. And also looking at the number of scripts, 30% of people had 7+ scripts that they were regularly taking. So looking at the pre-post analysis, and this is in the Ironbark program, we didn't include the controls in the main analysis because numbers were too small and it wouldn't have been a sensible analysis to do. What you can see is that we did show significant improvements on all measures of the short physical performance battery total score. So these are all the measures of strength, gait and balance. They did improve on all of those. Improvements on the IPEC planned sport and planned activities score. Faster on the step test, and for the leg stance we had improvements on the left leg but not the right. It's only just not significant. I don't know whether that's something to do with leg dominance or power, but we can all have hypotheses about that. We didn't show any difference in things like the health related quality of life, Kessler score, which is for psychological distress, or fear of falling, or waist circumference. In the pilot we actually decreased BMI, but that didn't come we weren't able to replicate in this. So, I mean, I think that's all interesting. The fall-related measures, we didn't show a significant reduction in falls, but we're not really powered to do that now. But you can see that there was a bit of a decline. So having a fall in the last 12 months from baseline to follow up, 40% of people at baseline to 35%, but we can't read anything into that because it wasn't significant. So, but interestingly, looking at the control group, and the control group were slightly different. They were all female and they were a little bit older than the Ironbark group. But what's notable is that they're health-related. So, and again, this is just actually showing you what age-related decline looks like in a population over 12 months. Health-related quality of life declined. Their IPEC incidental activity declined significantly. They did actually improve slightly on the gait, but everything else, and they were slower on the step test. So I think that's really important to notice. And I think for the Ironbark, we're actually showing that we did actually manage to halt that decline that you're seeing in the control group as well. Oops. See, I'm showing, this is a problem with having a laptop here in the slides there. I'm changing the wrong one. Okay, now I'm going to hand over to Cassia. She's going to talk about the elders' experience of the program.
Okay. So as you can see there, really good feelings about the program. The social aspect has been massive, the social connectedness. We're all family. That's what we say. We're all family. And people have someone to call on if they have a fall. Learning that certain muscles need to be strong and healthy because if you fall, you need those muscles to get back up or whatever. So a lot of learning has taken place as well, and the confidence. I had a cane, but I've put it aside. I've been able to put it aside. Well, thanks. And motivation. Like the site managers really noticed that people are really keen to come along to the program, and also some competitive spirits there too, which is always fun. They've obviously seen improvements in balance and strength, and everybody checking up on everyone, seeing how they're going. Some people have said that this is the reason they're leaving home for the week. So it's been really meaningful for a lot of people socially. I think the fact that the sites could deliver it, obviously there was, a way or a prescription you could use, but the sites could take it how they wanted to as well and customise it. It's pretty important. It's for an Aboriginal program, and having Aboriginal staff, local people that are known, it's obviously going to make a big difference in the success of the program. Transport is a really big deal for some sites, especially more rural sites, maybe sites with less funding and one AMS in a region and not an AMS with like 5 different sub-AMSs, like not sub-AMSs, but some have transport and some don't, so that's a consideration sometimes for running it.
Thanks, Cassia. So just in conclusion, I think what we've been able to show again is that the Ironbark program is effective in improving measures of strength, gait and balance. The program is really highly valued, and you only need to go along to the program and you can see the camaraderie. So it's addressing social isolation. People are coming together. I saw time after time for the sites that I visit, people are just saying, this is the only thing that I leave home for. This is really meaningful to me. We're here with Mob doing stuff, and they're doing all their exercises at home as well. So the focus now is on implementation. Our email address is there and the Ironbark website. We are just reorienting everything ready for rollout. There's quite a few PHNs and LHDs and Aboriginal Community Controlled Health Services which are either starting up or continuing funding from before. The feedback is that we want future adaptations as a holistic program addressing chronic conditions and falls to address issues of sustainability. People have said we'd actually like it to run 2 or 3 times in the week so that we can come along a few times a week and other people can drop in and out according to what they've got. It is significant that it's a successful program, and even though I'm a non-Aboriginal person, it is actually a program that's been largely designed by Aboriginal people for Aboriginal people and implemented in an Aboriginal community settings. It's very rare. It's a unique program. And I'm just going to highlight the study team, and thank you to all of our collaborators, including Cathie, Anne and Kim Delbert, who are all here. But you can see the names in red are the Aboriginal people on the program. And oh my God, I did it again. Sorry. So this is the team. So I mean, I think that really highlights to you the engagement and the also Lorraine Lovett, who's on the steering committee. It's been a really big program. It's had a lot of people run. We've got 2 Aboriginal PhD students, one who's graduated from WA, and Melissa McConaghy, who's working on it in New South Wales as well. So it's actually it's ticked a whole lot of boxes. I will wrap up now because I know we're over time. Thank you very much.
Such inspiring work and incredible team effort. Probably time for one question.
I just wanted to ask about the yarning circles. Was it specific topics, or it was just like organic kind of discussion?
No, we've got we designed there's manuals for the exercise program and for the yarning. So we've got manuals for about 18 weeks of yarns around 4 related risk factors. So, foot safety and so on, all the things that you would expect, a bit like stepping on. But it's delivered, and yarning is a bit different from, it's like facilitated discussion. So we do train the people that run the yarning circle. So it's not like someone standing there and lecturing a group of people. It's actually just sitting there going, everyone's checking each other's shoes out, going, Cassia, you can't wear those shoes, they're crap. And just having those kind of, engaged discussions. But there's manuals. What people do though, and again, because it's really designed as an ongoing program, is that they add, like it might take 2 or 3 weeks to get to a discussion. Someone might bring a nutritionist in or a physio or a podiatrist in at various weeks. So it's quite flexible.
Okay. Thanks very much. Brilliant.
I love the whole having a yarn. I think all groups should have that because it creates so much discussion. Next we'd like to have Tess Hawkins. She's a senior exercise physiologist from the Centre of Sport and Strong Medicine at Haufort Hospital, and she'll be talking about a case for preventative outpatient services for older adults using the strong medicine model.
Thank you. Hello everyone, I'm Tess Hawkins, senior exercise physiologist at Strong at Concord. Strong is a preventative outpatient service that's multidisciplinary, and our aim is to promote good health, optimised health for older adults. I would also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we're meeting on today and pay my respects to elders past, present and anyone with us today that identifies as being Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander. So we know that the population is ageing and the chronic disease burden is growing, and as a result of that, there's more older adults presenting to hospital following falls. I believe, as many do, that multidisciplinary outpatient teams are well placed to manage modifiable risk factors of falls, to reduce the likelihood of falls and to reduce associated hospitalisations. Frailty is a significant modifiable risk factor of falls. And falls and frailty share many risk factors in common, including reduced function and polypharmacy. In 2017, the Asia Pacific Clinical Practice Guidelines had 7 recommendations for the management of frailty. And I want to draw on 3 in particular that are also relevant to falls. There they are. Recommendation 2, 3 and 5. So recommendation 2 promotes that progressive individualised physical activity programs are included for the management of frailty. That also polypharmacy should be addressed, and that where malnutrition is present, it should be screened for, considered, and appropriate nutrition advice provided, whether that is supplementation or real food. Now I'm talking about these 3 things because they form the basis of the Strong team. Dietitian, geriatrician, exercise physiology. Which brings me to talking more about Strong. So we're a multidisciplinary outpatient team, like I said before, with geriatrician. We've got a team of geriatricians that refer into us. We have maybe 15 geriatricians. We've got 3 exercise physiologists and a dietitian. We work together to collectively try to promote the health of the people that we're seeing, and that's specifically in relation to the chronic disease that they present with, but also promote continued exercise, continued dietary advice that they can keep doing beyond seeing us as well. Interestingly, our service at Concord is based on the Balmain model. It's under the same name at Balmain Hospital, and it's existed for about 20 years. We are new and opened in November 2022. So we've been open for almost 18 months now, which is pretty exciting.
So as part of this service existing, I evaluated the first financial year, so that was November 2022 to June 2023, and that's what I'll be talking predominantly about today. So what I did is I wanted to look at how successful we were. I wanted to look at the service implementation, so look at the outcomes that we achieved, and the feasibility of the model. Is this something that we can really sustainably keep going, and should it exist in more locations? So who we see adults over the age of 65. The oldest person we've seen so far is 101, so there are no limits. When the person has to have, or the people have to have, chronic disease known to be responsive to exercise, and you can see some on the screen there, but there are many, and there are beyond that. The person must reside for us in the Concord or Canterbury hospital catchment areas, be able to attend our clinic in person for assessment, be able to participate in up to 1 hour of moderate intensity exercise with rests, and have a goal of functional, mood, or health improvement. They have to want to be there, and that is important because it helps us then in our discharge planning, because we know that exercise or diet is important to that person, hopefully both. So I like to describe our model as a sandwich. I always describe that to the patients and they quite enjoy it, so I'm going to do that here today again. So they come in, they see a geriatrician, they then see allied health, which is exercise physiology and dietetics, before having an intervention. In this case, it was 12 weeks of concurrent exercise and diet interventions before seeing EP and diet again for reassessment, and then the geriatrician. So when you flip that on its head, it's a bit like a hamburger. The assessments there that we conduct a frailty screening using the Fried Frailty Phenotype. It's a 5-point scale. That includes, we also measure hand grip strength and walking speed as part of that scale. The Fall Self-Efficacy Scale, this looks at their concern around falling. Higher score indicates higher concern. The Short Physical Performance Battery, which has been mentioned before today, a combination of walking speed, chair rise, time, and balance, static balance. Leg strength, and we did that through measuring 1 repetition leg press strength testing, so the most weight someone can move 1 time only. A mini nutritional assessment, long form, and then at the end we also a PREM, so a patient experience measure, so we can understand the experience of the people in front of us. So then a bit more about the interventions. So this might look vague because it's different for every person. It's individualised, it's progressive, it's multimodal. All programs include resistance training element and a balance element, and some people also receive aerobic exercise as well. It just depends on their needs, their conditions, what they enjoy. It was twice weekly, supervised group, between 1 and 3 sets of exercise, between 5 and 12 repetitions, specific for that person and their goals and needs. And diet intervention, again, individualised, when protein supplement provided as indicated. So interestingly, 85% of those people were provided with protein supplement, which is quite a high amount. People can be quite resistant to changing their diet. They like it and they don't want to change it, but they are happy to have something new, and that's what we learned. Interestingly, of the 59 people that we reassessed after 12 weeks of intervention, the average age was 80, and it was about a half male-female split, and that's continued. That information's still quite current to this day. So after the 12 weeks, we saw significant improvements in frailty status, full self-efficacy, function, leg strength, and nutrition status. So from a frailty status, that was the Fried Frailty Phenotype, like I just said, it reduced by 0.4 on that 5-point scale. Full self-efficacy, people reported to be more confident, which reduced their outcomes there by 4 points. Function, people improved the SPPB, and that was predominantly either associated with improving their sit-to-stand time or improving their static balance. And it can be, it is a good test. However, for some people that are really good, it can cap out. So we acknowledge that within our results as well. The leg strength for leg press 1RM, we on average saw a 34 kilogram increase, which is quite huge. So from a starting point, men started on average in this group at 115 kilos and women at 75 kilos. And the SPPB starting point was 8.5. So, you know, they're quite good outcomes that we've seen there. From a nutrition standpoint, we've also seen an increase in 2.6 points. So people have better nutrition as assessed using that scale as well. And it should be noted that there was no sex effect here as well, so it did not matter male or female. So then I guess that's the outcomes from then a model feasibility standpoint. Then we've had a look at that via activity. So how many people, how many occasions of service are we providing, and what's the rate of referral? So both increased as we would expect from week one, but you can see monthly here it's a continued increase. There was a dip in April, and that was due to the combination of Easter, Anzac Day, school holidays, which saw less staff, so less referrals and less occasions provided, but overall that was an increase. And I can say that beyond this graph, it has continued in a very upward direction. This is something I wanted to share, and everyone before me has shared this as well, and I think it's really powerful. As part of the anonymous prem, people write down feedback to us, and we asked them, did you feel that there was any benefit? And here's some of the responses. There's 6 here. So the first one, my legs feel stronger, getting out of a chair is noticeably easier. My balance is much better. I can walk with confidence now. I can't believe I can stand on one leg for 15 seconds. I'm proud. And you should have seen the smile. It's just, it's really great when people can share that with you. I'm confident. I'm less fearful of falling. And those last 2 I think are particularly important. So I've enjoyed learning a new type of exercise and skills that will better my health. I like that it isn't medication or surgery. And that was fully unprompted. It's great to get things like that. And the last one in particular. So I thought as I got older, I would decline. I would only decline. But this program has made me realise that it's not necessarily the case. And, hearing that, it makes you really happy to turn up to work. So this success wasn't without limitation. You always have to say that. Our wait times have continued to increase. Our service, referral rates are definitely there. And that is a challenge. And as a result of that, we have made some changes to the way that we're currently operating. Our capacity is restricted to our staffing and equipment. As a result of our increase in referrals, our dietitian now sees people that are a lower category priority in a group scenario rather than individual as a time restraint. And that we are currently providing minimal virtual delivery. We would like to provide more. People are not uptaking it. They want to come in, they want to use the equipment, but it is something that we would like to do more, and really have that there is something that we can strongly do. So overall, it has been really successful. It's exciting. We have seen an increase in service demand. We've seen significant improvements in health outcomes and falls-related risk factors. However, that further evaluation is needed over a continued time period. It's the next financial year now. It's probably up for another evaluation of how things are going. But it is really exciting to be able to share the outcomes of our service with you today. So thank you.
We've got probably time for one question. Excellent.
Can I just ask, with the success of your program, are you finding that the 12 weeks becomes a constraint, and would you have to have that conversation about changing the length of time you run the program?
That's a great question. And we have done that. So we saw people twice a week for the first 12 months, and then we had a very positive thing happen last year. We launched our service, which saw the New South Wales Premier New South Wales Health Minister turn up in every news channel. And then we were on every news channel that night. And our rate of referral just went like this. So we had to look at what was going on. And after 12 months, we said we just can't see people for twice a week for 12 weeks. We just, the community demand is higher than that model. So we used a framework, remodeled what we're doing, and now see people for individualised amount of time and duration, which is allowing us to see more people and also meet people's needs more. So we've got some people that come in and they'll go, I have a gym in my complex, I already use it, but I don't think I'm using it very well. And you go, no worries, we can help you. We can see you a handful of times. And we've got people who are 90 years old and they go, I've never exercised in my life, I'd like to learn. And with that comes a little bit more time normally. So being able to individualise that has allowed us to see about a quarter more people in our week at the moment. So there has been many changes, but that is one of them.
Thank you. Thank you.
You all got one job this next year, and that's to make friends with a journalist or comms person, and that will make a big difference.
Excellent. Very good point. Yeah, great talk, Tess. I certainly enjoyed my visit to your clinic. So delighted. Oh, and actually, before I go on, I'll just also, haven't had much time for questions, but the Slido is operating. So if people feel free to put questions in the Slido as well, and we can try and get them passed on to the presenters. And yeah, it's now my pleasure to actually welcome one of my students, Vanessa Kwok, who's going to be talking to us about physical activity and falls.
So hello everyone, my name is Vanessa Kwok. I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Sydney. So today I'm talking to you about physical activity and falls in women. So the World Health Organization has a guideline on physical activity and recommended adults to undertake at least 150 to 300 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity per week. And this guideline is similar for older adults. And for falls, I'm sure I don't actually need to convince you the problem of falls in this conference. And this is the reason why I quite like joining a falls conference. But before I talk to you about my study, I'm going to talk you through one of the clinical experience that I had as a fresh graduate physio in a clinic. But that really explains quite well the reason why I'm doing this research. So one day, a patient of her early 70s visited the clinic because of ankle pain, and she described that she had 2 falls in the past week. On the standard clinical form, she needed to describe the reason why she had the injury. And what she said on the form was, going down the slope while I wasn't paying attention and fell over, while I imagining the slope as any other slope that you can imagine within your neighborhood, or even a slope like this. And only closer to the end of the section where the husband arrived and picked her up, and the husband blamed that it was from the tight shoes. And have a guess what shoes was that? Actually, it was a skiing shoes. So the lady was going down the slope while she wasn't paying attention when she was skiing, and she had 2 falls in the past week. So this is a clinical experience. While we, as a clinician, if we promote physical activity participation, we may actually increase the risk of falling because they might actually expose to the hazard environment. And the research question here really are there any association between physical activity and falls? And hopefully by today's the end of the presentation, you'll be able to answer that. So the results I presented today is all based on the Australian longitudinal study on women's health, which was started since 1996 in different cohorts. And in this project, we mainly focus on the cohort who were born between 1946 to 51, who were of middle age in 1996. And when one of the project, we will also include the participants who were born in 1921 to 26, who were of middle age, who were of older age at that time. So as you can see on the slide, participants responded to the survey every 3 years since 1996. And this is an example of the survey. So basically, the survey collected a range of variables that include the health condition, demographic, as well as health quality of life, and etc. And this is the example of this variable that they collected. So for physical activity, participants responded to the amount of physical activity they performed in the past week, and that included walking briskly, moderate leisure activity, as well as vigorous leisure activity. And in our study, we have 2 different ways of grouping exercise. First is the amount of physical activity. We sum all these 3 type activity to get the total amount, and we group them into 4 different groups based on the cutoff from the World Health Organization. And the other method that we use is we just look at whether these participants involved in the 3 types of activities separately. And for falls, participants responded to whether they had fallen in the past 12 months, and we group them into 3 different groups. Either participants who did not fall, or participants who fell without an injury, we call it non-injuries falls. And all participants who fell with an injury, and we call it injuries falls here. So here are our results. So the first project here really focuses on the understanding of the association between physical activity and force. So we basically just use physical activity and force data at one survey. But to be more thorough in this analysis, we included both the data from the 1946 to 51 and the 1921 to 26 cohort. And this is what we found. So on the figure here is already an adjusted odds ratio, which means that we already adjusted for individual differences. On the left-hand side is for the 1921 to 26 cohort, and that on the right-hand side is for the other cohort. So basically what here is telling us is that compared to those who report no activity at all, reaching the recommended level of physical activity, which is 150 to 300 minutes of activity, or more than the guideline recommended level, they all associated with reduction of non-injurious force if you are looking at the black odds ratio there, or reduction of injurious force if you are looking at the red odds ratio there. The reason for this is because all the odds ratio fall on your left-hand side and the line was not touching 1. So if you want an implication here, just taking 1946 to 51 cohort as an example, reaching the recommended level of physical activity had a reduction of non-injurious and injurious force by 22%. And we look at the different types of activity here, but then because of time constraint, I'm just going to talk you through quickly. Basically, brisk walking and moderate intensity activity were both associated with reduction of force in both cohorts. But if you're interested in this study, you can scan the QR code in order to get access for more information there. So moving on to the next part here, which is an extension of the first part. But the question here really are there association between physical activity and force the same between women with and without physical function limitation, as well as for frailty? For physical function limitation, we use the definition as whether participant responded they had limitation in climbing 1 flight of stairs or walking 100 meters. And this is what we found here. To orientate ourselves, this study only looked at injurious force. And again, compared to the reference group, which is no activity, women who had no physical function limitation and participating in activity, they were associated with also reduction of injurious force, as this odds ratio looks similar as the one that I showed on the slide. But for women who have physical function limitation, participating in physical activity were actually associated with increased injurious force risk. And this similar association can be also seen between women with or without frailty. So what I have shown you so far is an analysis that collected at one time point. In research, people would challenge that there is a reverse causality, which means that people not falling as much, they participate in more activity. And therefore, this is an extension of what we have been investigating on. But what we did is we used 2 surveys. So the idea is that we use physical activity participation at one time point when these women were in the late 60s. And then we used the force outcome 3 years later when these women of their early 70s. And this is what we found here. By just eyeballing the odds ratio on this figure, basically you can still see similar association as I shown before, which means that participating in the recommended level of physical activity or above, they still associated with reduction of non-injurious and injurious force here. And if you want the interpretation, a precise estimate, this will be the finding. So participating in guideline recommended level, there will be had a reduction of 26% less risk of non-injurious force and 30% less risk of injurious force 3 years later. And this association actually is similar even when we look at the different type of activity here. So what we have looked at just now is only like when these women were of their older age. But then this is the important part that we're going to dive into is what happened to physical activity participation in midlife and what happened to force afterwards. And because as we remember, the 1946 to 51 cohort will follow up from mid-age to older age, and this is what we are looking at. So the first part here is all the force outcome. When we have the exposure, which is a physical activity at 2004 survey, this survey were collected when women were of their 55 years old, and we look at all the outcomes that happened afterwards. And we look at all association as indicated in the arrow. With a statistical analysis, basically it just take an average of all these arrows. And this is what we found here. Again, you don't actually need to understand the figure. If you understand the direction of the odds ratio, basically here is similar to what I have shown you earlier in the beginning of the presentation. So participating in recommended level of physical activity at midlife had a reduction of non-injurious force risk by 11% and also injurious force risk reduction by 23%. So from today's presentation, what we found is there are association between physical activity and force in older adults. At the same time, we understand that the association between activity and force were different between women with or without physical function limitation, as well as with or without frailty. As a clinician, when we are advocating physical activity participation, I guess we need to be cautious on the population that we are looking at. And this is actually similar to the World Force Guideline recommendation, particularly for people with high risk of fall, that specific programs such as multi-professional, multifactorial assessment is needed to guide a tailored intervention. And again, what we look at the later stage of today's presentation is that physical activity participation at midlife was associated with reduction of subsequent falls. And the overall message here is actually we need to start a large-scale promotion of physical activity early and midlife to prevent falls and maintain function in order to achieve healthy aging. And I would just like to take a moment to acknowledge my funder, Women Have Study, as well as my supervisory team and all the collaborators in the project. Thank you.
Well done. That was masses of work, as you can imagine. Probably got time for one question, I think. I'll ask you a question. So, do we know much about the exact activities that people did?
From the question, we don't know the exact activity that the participant did, and this is the limitation of all the results that I presented today. They might, for instance, for the example that I've given to you, if they are all involved in skiing, then I'm not sure whether that will be the results. Like personally, even when I do snowboarding, I basically fall maybe 10 times each day. So like this is a limitation of the studies, but then in the study we basically look at the amount, whether they reach the recommended level of physical activity by the World Health Organization. Thank you.
All right. Next, we have got Dr. Melissa McConaghy, who is the CEO, a specialist neurological physiotherapist for the PD Warriors Program. So welcome. She'll be talking about the practical approach to fall prevention in Parkinson's disease.
Hi, everybody. This is going to be very much a translation of the research. The hard work has already been done by our esteemed colleagues here with Natalie and Daniel, thank you, and Paolo sitting over there, so I won't go through the research too much. More it's about how we've actually applied that clinically in our practice. And I'll be talking on the basis of PD Warrior and also what we've done in our Parkinson's clinic at Advanced Rehab Centre as well. So when we talk about PD Warrior is essentially a framework that we've created to support people with Parkinson's, and it was developed as an early intervention strategy for those that have mild to moderate symptoms. Acknowledging, of course, that Parkinson's being degenerative will ultimately continue to progress, and so we do have to consider what happens as people continue to progress with their condition and as they continue to age as well, because those risk factors will certainly apply. Parkinson's being incredibly heterogeneous is very complex. As we know, every patient that comes in is going to be slightly different to the next person that we see, and so it's very much around how we tailor each exercise to the individual and what exercises we actually choose and how we go about our clinical reasoning. So as part of educating our patients and also the clinicians that we treat, we have very much tried to simplify that tailoring of exercise to individuals, and we've done this on the basis of impairment. And so bradykinesia, we know, is the slowness of movement and the small scale of movement, which is very prevalent and very common in Parkinson's. If that is the predominant and defining feature for somebody with Parkinson's, we would treat that individual primarily for their bradykinesia, looking at how we can increase their amplitude, their scale of movement, and also the accuracy of the movement, because we don't want to create injuries either in our client cohort. If they're tremor dominant, there's going to be slightly different pathophysiology, and how we would treat those individuals would be quite different again. And so we would be looking more at motor output, augmented training, use of devices and equipment like treadmill and exercise bikes, etc., and very much focusing on the motor output that that individual is trying to generate. So quite different to bradykinesia. Then if we're talking about agility impaired, this is, as you can see, there's an arrow there. This is probably more the clients that have progressed. They're more moderate to later stage of their condition. They've already had one fall. They may be freezing as well. So this is more of our falls and freezes, our agility impaired cohort, which would also tend to indicate stage of condition. They've had the condition for a little bit longer. And when we talk about agility impaired, we know that this is really defining our postural instability and gait dysfunction, which when we talk about falls, I know, Paolo, your research recently showed in over 2,000 people, 94% of people that fall are in that PIGD, agility impaired cohort. And so how we treat those individuals very much is around falls prevention, agility, multi-directional stepping, weight shifting, etc. Now, with Parkinson's being predominantly an older a population of older conditions, we know that the risk factors for falls are going to be fairly similar as well. We've got weakness, we've got frailty, we've got peripheral vestibular dysfunction as well. We may have environmental concerns, polypharmacy. There'll be lots of things that individuals, because they're ageing with their Parkinson's, will be dealing with. And in Parkinson's specifically, they will also have to deal with freezing of gait, central vestibular dysfunction, orthostatic hypertension, which will be quite common in this population as well, and the specific Parkinson's medications that they will be taking. We know that levodopa, whilst it can improve, well, it does, improve movement in the individuals, it does also have an impact on balance, particularly postural sway. So we do need to factor in the medication that these individuals are taking as well when we're looking at what we're prescribing for our patients. So just looking at postural instability, we know that with postural stability, this is typically the integration of sensation, motor, visual, vestibular, and cognitive all together. And unfortunately in Parkinson's, every single one of these domains is impacted. So when we're looking at training for postural instability, what we're looking at is perturbation training, proprioceptive training, well, this is certainly our interpretation of the literature, weight shift training, vestibular training, both peripheral and central, and dual task training as well. Now you can see this individual here. We've got bungee cords strapped around so he's got a belt around his middle, and we've got bungee cords attached to the wall, dynabolted to the wall, and he's pulling against those bungee cords, which are also pulling him back. We're then asking him to walk on an area that's got reduced surface area forward and back, which is creating this external perturbation sensation. And I love the work that's been done at Neuro, where they've got slip and falls areas, and then you've got obstacles that just pop out of nowhere. We've not been able to create that in our clinical setting yet, but what we have been looking is quite nasty and very provocative trolleys, where you have your patient harnessed to a fall-safe harness, and then you move the trolley and see what happens and train them in that way. We haven't gone down that path yet, but that's certainly what we're looking at exploring, in addition to these bungee cords, which I think are fantastic for creating that external perturbation environment for patients. Hard to do that at home though, obviously. And what we do a lot with our Pity Warrior approach is spend majority of our time, not in this instance necessarily, but spend a lot of time setting patients up for when they're not with us. And so the majority of what we spend our time doing is making sure that patients are as effective as possible when they're not with us. And that can be really challenging when we're really trying to challenge their balance, but make sure they don't fall at the same time. And so it'll be enabling patients in the clinical setting to feel comfortable with what they're doing. Ideally, we have a training buddy with them, spouse, son, daughter, whoever that might be, paid support worker, who can then continue the work at home. But obviously the challenge component is not going to be as great. It's not going to be as provocative for what they're doing at home. I'll just see if this other video here works as well. And again, just looking at postural stability training with an unstable base, trying to distract individuals with throwing balls at them, seeing what they can do, whether they can catch them. We might have them on a wobble board turning heads as well. We might have them doing a cognitive challenge in addition to that. So again, just trying to layer up, depending on the capacity of the individual, to really challenge what they're doing in that clinical setting, and then trying to translate that into something that is safe and effective for them to do at home as well. Christine, this video here, or that video on the left there, is 7 years old now, and I was looking at this morning, looking at a perfect example of bradykinesia and how far you've come with your handstand work. So I'll just show this now if I can. Sorry, so if I could get that video to play. This is the reason I've got this in is because it's a beautiful example of bradykinesia. And when we're talking about proprioceptive training in Parkinson's, we know that typically this can be impaired. And if you look at the movement pattern here, what we can expect to see over time because of the bradykinesia is a change in soft tissue capacity. So we've got limitations in soft tissue over time because of learned non-use. And this can have a big impact for our patients, not just in what they can do in any given day functionally, but also in how they move and how they feel where they are in space. So it's that proprioceptive control as well. And Christine, I know you've done so much work with your handstand training. I'd be really surprised if that hadn't been significantly improved now if we looked at that exercise. And what we'll also do with our proprioceptive training, if I can get that next video to play as well, please, is we'll look at how people actually move beyond their centre of gravity or centre of mass. And for somebody like this gentleman here, he does not want to move forward because he's very, he can see where he's about to go, and most of our people with Parkinson's will fall forward when they fall. So having some capacity to take that step, that is one single step to pull them up to make sure that they're not falling beyond that, even in a very simple exercise like this, obviously set up at home with a wall in front of them just in case things go pear-shaped, but just looking at it also at the gastrocs deceleration and whether they've got control to actually master that as well. Now, if we stay on this video, what we'll see is the next trust exercise with this gentleman, which is where he does it backwards. So very, very challenging. And again, this is constantly where we find that it's pushing the boundaries of what we do with our patients. If you were really worried, we would put him up in a full safe harness. I don't think he's going to turn around there yet. But also having that wall behind him at home and getting him to feel like the wall might only be a foot behind him. He hasn't got far to go. So he can feel what's happening behind him and then take that lovely, large, big step. Because we know with a lot of our parkies, they're not going to take a big enough step when they lose their balance backwards, and that will often get them into trouble. So let's try and train them to do that. Weight shift is the next one. We know with our Parkinson's patients, with their narrowed base of support, particularly that lack of lateral movement through gait, they've got hypometric movement in gait, which can lead to that weakness in the glute med. What that will translate into as well is decreased weight shift in lots of different movements. So what we will try and target is multidirectional stepping. And this first video is looking at what typically happens with many of our patients in something that requires multidirectional stepping or stepping backwards. For lots of reasons, not confident stepping backwards, that agility is impaired. And we'll often see in a box step that they will not want to engage and take that step back. So we can see it perfectly in this example here. Sorry, another video, please. So we can see the timing is 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's really typical in our Parkinson's population because they have a lot of difficulty set shifting and taking that step backwards. So what we will train our patients with is 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's 3, which is the sticking point. And so it's working with patients, providing that demonstration. 1, 2, 3, 4, and not allowing that time for them to think about it. Oh, I don't really want to do this. Oh, I'm really nervous about it. It's forcing the movement and getting them really comfortable with taking that step backwards. And with that weight shift, right, left, or right, left, left, right, left, right. What we can see there in the next video is obviously just layering up the complexity, different obstacles that they have to step over in lots of different scenarios. We've got this lady here strung up with a fall safe harness and really trying to force what she's doing on an incline, stepping forward, stepping back. That is probably, when I look at it now, a little bit sloppy. I'd want to see a lot more consistent. 1, 2, 3, 4, change. 1, 2, 3. And so you can see how, again, we're looking at the accuracy of movement, but really forcing that weight shift. And obviously the treadmill waits for no man. If that person stops, they're going to end up wrapped around a cross trainer. So this is not typically something you would get somebody to do independently, but we have had, particularly through COVID, people hiring treadmills and going through some of these drills with a training buddy next to them. And on the right there, I just wanted to show blaze pods, which I'm sure many of you will be familiar with, but the ability to set up lots of different scenarios for patients where they're having to scan, so it's that visual processing component as well. There's lots of different lights that flicker at different times. They're having to scan various different angles. You might have it up, down. You might have it on a treadmill, which is often what we'll set up as well. So they're walking and having to scan and process where the lights are as well. And then if you're not familiar with the Clock Yourself app as well, that's a really lovely way that we can translate what they do in the clinical setting back into the home-based environment as well. Thank you. Now with vestibular training, so with our ageing population, which is the predominant age group for our Parkinson's population, we know that about 50% of them are likely to have some peripheral vestibular concern. So that'll be typically BPPV. And if we're not screening for that, sometimes we're just not going to be able to get that significant improvement with our patients. And a lot of them will complain of dizziness, and most of them, but not all, will have orthostatic hypertension leading to that dizziness. So once you take out the peripheral component and the orthostatic hypertension, what we're left with is a cohort that might have central vestibular problems. And this is more recently something that we're investigating in our clinical setting, and there's a really high proportion of people that have those central vestibular dysfunctions. So they're complaining of dizziness and nausea, easily provoked. They've got ocular motor dysfunction, so they've got a lot of difficulty with gaze stability and smooth pursuit. They've got hypermetric saccades, and all of that, again, we can be working on the proprioception and mobility, but if we're not identifying the central vestibular dysfunction, then we're really not going to be able to achieve a lot with our patients as well, and they're still going to be at high risk of falls. So this is an example of a very provocative exercise that we might give to one of our patients. Oops, if I can, yeah, oh, there we go. We'll call this snatch and grab for obvious reasons. And it may be that people can only do 2 of those repetitions to start with whilst they build up to something that is more tolerable for them. So what we would say is they'd need to be probably doing this exercise 5 times a day, or a version of this. It might start here, just to see how they tolerate that and build that up over time. And then in many instances, trying to really challenge proprioception and vestibular system at the same time. With respect to freezing of gait, we know that most of our fallers have freezing of gait problems, and so we're really trying to identify freezing of gait strategies. Many of our freezers will also have cognitive deficits as well. So you can see here that weight shift is significantly impaired in a lot of our freezers. So what we're trying to address in the first video is what we call penguin waddle, which is again just trying to establish some baseline for weight shift with our patients. In the second video here, we're doing over the river, which is a combination exercise. I'll get onto that video in a minute. But a combination exercise where they're stepping over an obstacle, and it's quite a large step. They've got a narrow base of support. There is a turning component, and then they're coming back to repeat that activity and exercise. And so what we're trying to achieve with both of those exercises is when we look at the sub-categorisation of freezers with the work done at Sydney Uni, is looking at if they're responsive to medication, but they've got a movement dysfunction. That's where we're really going to be looking at trying to encourage, at the level of the impairment, weight shift in lots of different domains and environments, and then build up their strength and then try and layer that with some dual tasking components as well. So what we will do with the penguin waddle is once we actually get this weight shift, we will then challenge that movement by either adding a translation, so they're stepping backwards, or they're adding in an arm component, which is really challenging. And a lot of patients will then start to abduct or banana bend, or they'll just stop. They won't be able to do both. And so really challenging that, we find, just gives that extra layer of challenge and complexity to really overtrain that weight shift in lots of different ways. And then for some patients who are exceptional, we might add in a cognitive dual task as well. Now the last video there, we've just started working with our Parkinson's patients, our freezers specifically, on our robotic assisted gait training device, which is an end effector. Kapeshi has done some research looking at the impact of robotic assisted gait training devices on freezing of gait, and we've got some really positive outcomes from some of our patients, but we are working with them very intensively in this capacity. So 3 times a week, 45 to 60 minute sessions, 4,000 plus steps per session. And we are seeing really promising gains, but we've kind of modelled that off Laurie King's work, which is agility boot camps, and that's done over 4 weeks. But what happens after 4 weeks is it starts to decline. So what we're still trying to grapple with is how do we sustain this? Like, do we need to have patients coming in chronically to use a device like this, or is there other ways that we can maintain those gains? So that's what we're kind of grappling with at the moment. Technology is fantastic, but at some stage we want to be able to have them do that independently. And to get 4,000 steps in a single session is really, really hard, you can imagine. We had a behaviour study with one of our honours students, and in a gait training session, we could really only get up to about 1,000 steps in a gait training session without our robotic assisted gait training device. So the dosage alone is brilliant from one of these devices, but how do we replicate that without these devices? Strength and skill training. So obviously with our patients, as they tend to get older, they may become more sedentary and they may become more frail. So this is not, Parkinson's is not immune to this. But the knock-on effect is they'll often have this latency of muscle recruitment and the ramp up. And so that will have a big impact in power. So activities like getting out of a chair. Now, if you combine that with difficulty with not wanting to come forward because of fear of falling, that's doubly difficult for patients to get out of a chair. And so we've really used the work of optimal theory, which is Gabrielle Wolfe and Rebecca Luftwade. If you haven't seen that before, I'd highly encourage you to check out that research. It's wonderful. And one of their motivational constructs was around focusing on an external reference point. And so specifically in Parkinson's, with this loss of automaticity of movement, we don't want to compound that any further with interference, with think about this and do that. They've already lost the automaticity. The more we get them to think about a particular task, the more interference we're likely to see. So what we do now, and this is not the best video of it, but you can see here, if I can see that video there, thank you. So this gentleman had a lot of difficulty getting out of a chair, so we actually created his external reference point as the floor, got him to come forward, reach to the ceiling, and then sit down. Now I can see that he's sitting down like a sack of potatoes, which you can only often see after you've filmed this. But you can see here that we're trying to get him to come forward in one beautiful big movement, touch the floor, touch the ceiling, and then control his sitting back down. Okay, and we've made it nice and high in the plinth so that you can achieve that comfortably to start with. And then obviously we'd make that more challenging by bringing the chair down. And then we would establish, okay, how are you going to do this at home? How are you going to do it safely? How many repetitions, etc. Where's Eloise that is repetitions and sets back in our world? And then the other thing might be, okay, given that you're falling 10 times a week or something like that, how are you getting up off the floor? And so obviously it would be going through skills training of how are you getting off the floor. Let's do that in session. So again, we might go through a really basic floor kneel exercise, which might need to be graded. So they might just go down to a step to start with, and then they'll have to work up to something like this. But it is still incredible how many patients don't know how to get up off the floor. So it is imperative that if they're fallers, we show them how to do that. And one of the last areas that we work on with our OT colleagues is cognitive training. So a lot of our patients will have impairments within this pyramid model. So this is the Malia and Brannigan hierarchy of cognition, which I think makes so much sense to a physio. I need it broken down in really simple terms for me. And a lot of our patients will come in with memory concerns. Oh, my memory's really rubbish, etc. But the way it's been described to me is typically it's a problem with their inability to sustain attention. And so if you can't sustain attention, you can't retain the information and you can't draw on that when you need it. And that's what's often leading to memory problems. So with our Parkinson's patients, they will often have difficulties with sustained attention. They won't be able to keep their attention and focus on the task that you've given them, let alone the information. They won't store that and they won't retain it. And when we don't focus on this, a lot of our patients get very creative with their home exercise program between when we see them one session and the next, because they haven't retained that information. We haven't spent enough time and we haven't given them the opportunity to really attend to the task. So that's the first thing. And then the ability to shift their attention is really significant as well. And often our patients won't be able to do that very comfortably. So we really want to challenge that dual tasking component.
We're going to have to push you
You're going to have to push me up. All right, so I'm going to just finish off right now and say, last thing I've learnt from my patients is they'll come in and complain about having to exercise. Apathy is a big barrier, etc. One of the best lessons I've learned from my patients is from one of them saying, you don't have to exercise, you get to exercise. And how wonderful is this that you will see improvements from your exercise? And so we've translated that into you get to take medication. How wonderful is it in Parkinson's that it can manage symptoms to a point? Wonderful. There's lots of conditions that don't allow for that. you get to live with Parkinson's. It's not considered a terminal condition this day and age. So let's focus on the positives. So I'll finish there now. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. We've just got to go to our last presentation, which is Megan Swann, who's going to be telling us about translating research to practice, a clinician's story. I'm just going to have to duck off to get ready for the next session.
Okay. Hello there. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak today about translating research to practice and a clinical story. Well, it's actually my story. I'm just going to tell you the whole story of how, for those of you who don't know about stepping on, I'll talk a little bit about that, but really it's about my story and how long it's taken. This journey for me has taken 25 years and it continues. So just letting you know the story behind it. Firstly, just make sure I get this right. Yeah. What is stepping on? For those who don't know what stepping on is, I hope everyone does, but if they don't, it's a 7-week program that is 2 hours a week. Participants meet at the same place and time each week, and based on current falls prevention knowledge and the behavioural cognitive approach. It's the delivery of the program that sets it aside from other programs. So it's cost effective, and there's been much research done in the US about the program because they can't believe it works. So it's a cost effective program as well. So where are we now? Stepping On is developed in Australia and is now represented in most states in Northern America. It's been picked up by the Wisconsin Institute of Healthy Aging, and which is pretty fantastic. It's been supported by New South Wales Health since 2008. There are other states running the program. We've got it's been run in psychiatric outpatient groups. It's been run with cancer groups. It's been run with carers groups. It's done with stroke groups. It's been run in Aboriginal communities, and it's been run at least, we've got handouts on Sydney University Press in 18 different, it's been translated into 18 different languages. So it does come across all nationalities and groups in Australia. We've also got, and I think the pictures explain it better, so we have a manual. I just happen to have one sitting here at my chair. The manual was so important, and it's this has just come out. This is I pronounce it properly. Is anyone that's Spanish? I don't know. Pasando Filata. Is that right? Pasando Filata? Yeah, fuerte. Yeah. Yes, it's the first edition. It's only just come out, and it's for the Latin. It's a Spanish-speaking Latin American US audience, and it's a fantastic manual. And it's Lindy, myself, Professor Lindy Clemson will be talking about that partnership, and Jane Mahoney, who's picked up Stepping On through Wisconsin Institute of Healthy Aging in Wisconsin, and we've written the manual for the facilitators in the Latin American area of the US. So that's pretty exciting because, it's pretty, I thought that was pretty cool. Thank you. Now the next one is the purple one, which is my colour, I love purple, is the Australian manual. Now that's the 3rd edition, and it came out in 2004 originally. And it's just, this one's 2019, it's been updated, so that's pretty exciting. Then the green picture on the right is the US Northern American edition, which we've written with Dr. Jane Mahoney. Wisconsin Institute of Healthy Aging is where community health started in the world, and they picked up on Stepping On very, very quickly, and they have been rolling it out and training people in America for probably the last 15, 16 years, so great uptake there. It's also being run in Sweden, Korea, Hong Kong, where else? That's what we know about it. I do get random emails from people who are doing it one-off from each different country, other countries, but as a whole, I think that's enough. I think it's pretty good. So the next picture is Staying Power, for those who don't know about it. It's a companion book for older people who have not had the ability to get to stepping on, who want some more facts about falls prevention. So before we even start, I'm going to start with a story. Now, in Stepping On, we love stories. Stories is how we make sense of the world. Stories are used in Stepping On a lot, so that's why it works in all different cultures, because every culture has their own stories and their own yarning or their own getting together and talking about what makes their culture work. I'll just tell you this story. A woman in her 30s was seriously hit as a pedestrian and fell on the bitumen on the road, Parramatta Road, and then lay in hospital for 6 weeks and had a long period of recuperation and rehabilitation. Although younger than most older people, and what followed was her insight into the journey older people have had after a fall, their physical and emotional journey. The physical pain, spasm, pressure areas, and all that one thing, but the psychological effects are far greater. First, the hospital. You can become a number. People related to you differently. Some staff tended to patronise you. In fact, when you lay down, they thought your intelligence had disappeared. They talked above you, and when you went in the room, or if you were in the room, they'd start calling you darling and dearie, even though you weren't old. But it was dealing with the psychological moments that affected her the most, a feeling that her body had let her down, low confidence, feeling she may fall over again, vulnerability, loss of control, and tended to doubt herself constantly. And she didn't have health professionals and other people in the community saying, well, you're old, what do you expect? You're just going to fall over anyway. She had one incident stand out in her mind, a big sale on at a department store, and it was her first shopping expedition. She had a walking stick and a bag in one hand. She approached the escalators thinking, good, leg first, and so proud of herself. I got on. Halfway down, the steps descended, and she felt a sense of doom. Many people had alighted in the escalator, and they were all congested at the bottom, talking. Maybe she couldn't get off the escalator without falling. She started to sink. Her legs weren't strong. All those self-doubting thoughts. Oh, my God, I've lost confidence in my body. I don't think I can get off this escalator. The shopping trolley. I just want to stay home now. This is all too much. Well, I'm just letting you know that person was me. And that's where I got into the head of someone who has had a fall. I understood what it's like to have no balance, to walk with a stick, to feel scared. And that's basically how older people feel. And that's not what's talked about with falls prevention, is the feeling of loss of control, loss of confidence, and a feeling that the body's failed them. And I think that's not mentioned enough in falls prevention. It's not just the strength and balance. It's about your head, what's going on in your head. And that can make you fall over more. And there has been studies shown about over that. Anyway, so I had that in my mind. So then my journey started with a method. Just coincidentally, I was working at Glebe Community Health Centre at Redfern, and I was running groups, because I have been a health promotion worker as well as an OT, at the big towers at Redfern. And I met up with, she wasn't professor then, but Lindsay Clemson in 1999, and we thought about doing a pilot group, a 7-week pilot group with, and the word falls prevention was mentioned. Now, falls prevention wasn't even used in 1999. I don't think people knew what it was. So we did a pilot group, and it was so promising. Okay. I was involved in the research, running 12 groups for the time. Information, however, we didn't know if it worked or not. And yes, it did. It did work. It was fantastic. Through the randomised controlled trial, it worked. So the quickest way to succeed is to start now, and I had no idea what to do with this research. So what I did was, luckily, I moved to Prince of Wales, where I had, I've only got 1 minute to go. I thought I had 10 minutes. I had to move to Prince of Wales Hospital, where under the partnership of the OT manager and physio manager supported the program. Jackie Close was a fantastic advocate, and she mentored. It was just wonderful, and she started her own Falls and Balance clinic, and it was a natural referral process. I worked at Prince of Wales for 15 years and got embedded into the program. I also worked at St Vincent's Hospital. I'm just going to move through here because I have to move. The partnership with Lindy Clemson is still going strong. I partnershiped with Sydney University Press. A partnership with Ministry of Health started the rollout in 2008. A partnership I did with Primary Healthcare, Perth, Tasmania, Queensland. And I want to thank all the step-on coordinators. A special thank you to Nadia Williams and her team at Royal Ride Rehab for the support and passion. I've conducted over 400 programs and still run them. I run over 200 training programs and now running training workshops as a private consultant. As I'll just sum it up. I could have said much more, but I won't because I've got to go. Want to thank all the evidence to practice in the community setting is difficult. Pressure on waiting lists is easy to resort to default medical model. There is no overt opposition. There is no overt opposition, but clinicians tend to follow established practice. Translating research to practice is complicated, slow, and long term. Maintaining program fidelity, tension is easy to deliver versus delivering the best practice for participants. I want to thank you for all the colleagues that have supported me. Sorry, I have to cut it short. So yeah, that's my journey, and it continues.